And welcome back to this portion of the show where we have a really special guest on with us. I hope I'm saying this right. Hayat, from the assistant to the director of Moon Knight, and she's lived like a lifetime. It seems like she's done a lot of cool stuff. We're going to get to her in just a second. As always, make sure you go to our links, hopsnews.beer and Hops Geek News on Twitter, Instagram. I'll read all of our articles. I might be seeing Top Gun this week, so maybe we'll have an article out for that. But without further ado, let's get to our guest. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. I know there's a lot of jet lag, like you mentioned, a lot of things, so we really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's talk about kind of like how you got into filmmaking.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. Super happy to be here. So I'm Hayat. An Egyptian filmmaker. Most recently, I was the assistant to the director on Moon Knight. But I had a kind of like interesting journey there. I've always loved the arts in general, and I've always been fascinated by cinema and by like movies and TV. I grew up traveling around a lot, and I think that just like gave me a home away from home, no matter where I was. Like I loved the Disney Channel, for instance, growing up, and it just like it was a constant, no matter where I was, and I was just fascinated by how you can kind of have like an alternate reality that you can live in no matter where you are on Earth. This sounds very Marvel, but it's not meant to.
Blink twice if they're giving you things to say.
And at the same time, I moved to the US when I was 13, and I was in a predominantly white school. And I think like being like moving here and realizing just that I was like different from everyone else and everything, that kind of like pushed me into being interested in issues related to sociology and politics and all of that. So I got involved with like the diversity club, and I was living in New York, so I was like attending a lot of events that were about diversity and human rights and everything. And I just kind of like had these two passions, and I wasn't quite sure what to pick. But I got lucky. I found like a dual bachelor's program. So I was able to study politics and Middle Eastern studies for 2 years. And then finally, after like a 20-year wait, study film. So that was awesome. And then, yeah, I graduated mid pandemic. So that was fun. Um, and the Moon Knight thing kind of fell from the skies. It was exactly, I mean, it's everything I could have ever wished for, and I got really lucky to get involved in something like that, especially considering like the circumstances around the world.
Right. I mean, there is, especially now, everything's so politically driven around the world, and it seems like we're all more cognizant in a way. Um, so you started out like, I saw that you interned with the UN Women in the Lebanese March, and like you went like, yeah, that it seems like that's super cool. Tell us kind of about that. Like, what was your role there, and what kind of things did you do?
Yeah. So when I started out university, I was studying kind of the social sciences with a focus on the Middle East and on international law, and kind of just like at first was like, okay, like I'm gonna delve into that. So I was lucky to kind of be able to do UN Women in Cairo for a couple of weeks, and then also work with March in Lebanon, which is an NGO that uses the arts to kind of bring people together. So I was already kind of like slowly making my way to film, I think, in a way. But it was really great. I mean, I always say like, I feel like I grew as a filmmaker thanks to those experiences, because, film is not just about learning, or at least studying film is not just learning about how to make movies, but it's also, you have to have stories that you want to tell. And I'm really privileged to kind of have had these experiences, and like been able to kind of gain, I think, just like life experience to then have things that have inspired me for the projects that I'm working on.
Yeah, it's great because in film, you know, that's kind of how nowadays you bring awareness to issues, right? Like a lot of people see something in a movie or a TV show, and then it translates to, oh, they want to learn, you know, become active in a certain thing. So you can kind of use it twofold, both backgrounds, to tell the stories that you want to tell and also bring awareness to a whole array of issues.
100%. I mean, I think, it's so interesting about film and media, but specifically like entertainment, is that you can bring issues to the light in a way that's fun and accessible to a lot of people. Because like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people all around the world that are doing amazing things to change the world, right? Like, but the problem is like things like academia or politics or whatever, like they're not necessarily accessible to everyone from different backgrounds or even different ages, versus like when you have a TV series or a film, and especially again like more entertainment ones, so like like genre films, like a rom-com or a superhero film, like that's something that everyone from the age of 10 to the age of however is going to want to go see on a Friday night at the theater. And so you're almost kind of like guaranteed, yeah, exactly. You're almost like guaranteed impact, right? And I think like that's what's so fascinating about film, about media, about entertainment, is just like you can get a story across to people from all around the world. I mean, it's been fascinating to me, even with Moon Knight. Like, I have people from my kindergarten in Egypt to people from my high school in New York, like people from such different backgrounds. Like, everyone's contacting me, like, "Hey, I watched this," without me telling them to watch anything. By the way, these are people I haven't contacted
Oh,
in years,
wow.
but it just shows you like the reach that it has, and like how people like on a global scale are attracted to the story. And I think that's really the power that that has, is you're just reaching so many people. And I think there's something so fascinating about that.
I think that is amazing. I think Marvel's doing a great job too of kind of teaching some of those stories, because not every kid gets certain perspectives about things and learns certain things that they should learn. And you got a great platform, and yeah, Disney or Marvel's, I think, changing the world for the better. But maybe I'm just biased because I love Marvel.
No, I mean, it's honestly amazing. I grew up loving Marvel as well, and like to see today like just how many stories they're bringing to the light that are quote unquote different, or like that we haven't seen kind of portrayed in Hollywood before, is so cool. Obviously, like I'm biased towards Moon Knight because I worked on it and because it's about Egypt and I'm Egyptian, but all the other shows and movies that have come out and that will come out are also just like so exciting to me. And I just feel like it's also just cool to see something different on the screen. Like, we've seen so much New York. I love
Oh
New
my
York.
God.
I
Yeah.
grew up there, but like it's just like exciting from a storytelling perspective and from a visual perspective to just be seeing something different. Like, it's been however many years of Marvel, and it's just really cool to have the opportunity to see like the stories that we've loved for more than a decade, but in a refreshing way as well, with new
Yeah.
exciting characters.
Well, I mean, if you look back to, I mean, your early 2000s or whatever, you weren't getting, people like African American Captain America or Egyptian superheroes. It's more of like, okay, the Fantastic Four. Yeah. Okay. New York, or you were getting, Iron Man and Captain, or like all these. And so now kids, it kind of translates to kids at the end of the day, right? That's how it goes. And now kids are like, wow, I could be a superhero potentially growing up. And the way you guys get to tell these stories, it just impacts them on a whole deeper level than somebody like me. Cause I'm like, yeah, of course, Captain America, Iron Man. But then now kids like seeing Moon Knight, or we're seeing Captain Marvel out there for, like I have a daughter, she could see all these female superheroes. It just impacts on a whole different level.
Well,
No.
the scene in Moon Knight where Layla saves that little girl and she's like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" Like, I got emotional because that little girl wasn't even scared. She was just so excited to see a superhero that she could see herself in. That was like, I mean, how I felt. I can't imagine how you felt as an Egyptian woman. Like, that had to have been even more so. Because, yeah,
No,
that was adorable.
100%. Like, it's so like magical, honestly. And it's like almost sad that it took this long for it to happen, but it is just like so cool that it's finally happening. I mean, the first time we did a camera test, and May walked out in costume, not even the Scarlet Scarab costume, like just one of her other costumes. But you know, she still looks cool. She still looks like a superhero even before she becomes one. So she walks in front of the camera, and I'm like kind of like standing there, and I started tearing up because she had the big curly hair, and like she just looked so cool. And I was like, I mean, growing up, like I had, you know, there was Black Widow to look up to, like that was the cool woman in the MCU, but she looked nothing like me, and like I would never pull off like an all leather, like, you know, it just like felt so far away. Even as an adult now, like seeing a character like Layla come to life was just like, whoa, like this is, I had my graduation. I graduated a while ago, but we had our in person this year, and I wore my my hair curly, you know. I was like, okay, so it still has impact on people no matter what age, but I agree with you that especially for younger people, like it can mean, like it can make the difference between like going to school in the morning and being like apprehensive to like, okay, wait, like maybe I can be cool too.
So, I mean, you talk about stuffing something like, to most people's as small as the hair, right? I saw that you guys, even something like that, you guys fought to have her hair, you know, beautiful, curly, everything like that, because they wanted to change her hair for the show. But it's something as small as that means a lot to somebody.
Her hair was gorgeous. I need whatever defrizzer she uses, because oh my gosh, I'm not kidding. As somebody who doesn't have perfectly straight hair and lives in Florida, her hair was amazing.
Yeah, no, the hair and makeup team did an amazing job. But yeah, no, the devil's really in the details. And I mean, like, Marvel was so supportive, honestly. Like, they were, whenever, like, anything came up that was, like, Egypt related, they were so happy to listen. And then the heads of departments who weren't from Egypt also, like, were, had Egyptian consultants come on board. So everyone was really just, like, in the spirit of, like, how can we make this as authentic as possible? Wow. And again, like those details, they do end up coming also from firsthand experience. So it was really important to have Egyptian crew behind the scenes, no matter kind of like how big or small their role was or how long they actually came to the shoot. But for instance, like when we built Cairo in our backlot, which is kind of crazy to to wrap our heads around still. But as much as like, okay, like you can have the buildings there and they looked amazing, like they really looked like Cairo, but then the little touches that the consulting art director Ali puts in, like that's what really was like, oh my God, like if I like forgot that there's green screens beyond that, like I could sit and have my coffee and feel like I'm in Cairo.
Wow.
So yeah, it just goes to show, like, you know, it's important to have people on board who do come from that culture, from that world, or from that, you know, I mean, same goes for the DID. Like we had doctors on board to kind of help with that, Egyptologists for the ancient Egyptian mythology. Like it was really cool also to kind of have experts come on board, because you're like, okay, like we're dealing, like we were living and breathing this story for, you know, a year and a half for some, 5 months for some, a year for some. And it's like, it's nice to also understand the nuances of it and not just like the story, but like all, because Moon Knight has a lot of heavy things behind it. Like you have, you know, DID and you have Egyptian mythology. Like those are not simple matters to deal with.
Not at all.
Yeah, and they did it beautifully. And I love that they brought experts in, because some of that stuff seems silly. It's like, you know, if you lived in Miami and somebody calls something, there's some movie where they call it brickell rather than brickle. It's like you didn't have anybody on set that was familiar with that, and that's something silly. So when you're dealing with mental health and yeah, mythology and whatnot, yeah, you want to get it accurate. And I loved it because my daughter's big into, she loves all the Rick Riordan books, so Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, she loves all of it. And she was like, oh yeah, that's right, oh yeah, and she was telling me the stuff as they're like you know, coming out on the screen, and that makes it so much better for anybody who has any kind of insight on that, or knowledge, or experience, or their culture. And so, yeah, I think this was one of the best Disney Plus shows. I loved it. And I loved that we were Mark Spector and like we didn't know. I thought that was really cool. Go ahead, Matt. I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, since we've transitioned to the Moon Knight, like how did you end up going from politics to getting hired by Marvel, and then what was your role in the Moon Knight making?
Yeah. So by the time Moon Knight came to be, I was kind of already working in film. I was living in France. I was working in distribution, so kind of like the end of the chain. But I have a mentor, Daniel Ziskind. He works with Egyptian. He's French, but he works with Egyptian cinema, and he's produced a couple of Muhammad's films before. So he contacted me, and he was like, hey, there's an Egyptian director coming into town. He needs someone to help him out for the week. Is that fine? Muhammad at this point was working on his latest feature. And I was like, sure. So I would go work with Muhammad in the morning, go to my actual day thing, meet with Muhammad in the evening. It was kind of it was a intense but exciting week. And by complete coincidence, at the same time, I saw a post.
Oh wow!
Advertising for the Moon Knight assistant to director role, but it was so funny because it was like, hey, we're looking for someone who speaks Arabic, English, can live in Europe and the US and Egypt, preferably they must have lived in Egypt before, must like superheroes, and must know how to read and write scripts, something like that. And I read it and I was like, that sounds like me. There's no way
that's amazing.
Just,
must like superheroes.
That not for me. But at the same time, it was on Facebook I found it. There was no profile picture. There was no last name. And the email was a very random email. So in my head, I was like, this is probably some crazy short film somewhere. And I just didn't apply. And then I connected the dots because while I was working with Muhammad that week, he kind of he kind of was like, yeah, because I'm working on an American project. And then I kind of connected the dots that his wife's name was Sarah and the person who posted the thing was Sarah, blah, blah. And I just connected the dots and I was like, hey guys, wait, is this? And they were like, yeah, we felt it from the start. We'd love it if you came to work with us and stuff. So I had to do the official application with the Marvel crew. But yeah, it really was a strike of fate. So that's how it happened. And then my role on the show I basically was Muhammad's shadow. And because Muhammad was involved not only as
it seems like somebody made that.
Yeah, he because he wasn't only the lead director but also an executive producer, and him and his wife Sarah, who is a producer on the show as well, wrote a version of the script. I kind of my role shifted because during writing, we'd read the script and give notes and rewrites and all of that. Then during prep, I was helping organize all the meetings. And I think, honestly, I always say that was the funnest part for me because just seeing a Marvel production come to life is so cool because you walk into these big rooms where it's just thousands of textiles for the costume department, or it's just really a chocolate factory. And then during shooting, obviously my role was closer to that of an assistant director, where I was just time. How do we make this as efficient as possible? We have 6 episodes to shoot in 100 and however days. So, yeah.
So were you involved in pre-production and post-production as well?
All of it. I was involved basically, I would say, from the late development to post-production and press. Yeah.
So how long does that take? Because they're 6 mini movies basically. So how long were you working on Moon Knight total?
So when I got on board, we were still writing, and that they'd obviously been writing for years already. But so that was November to, we were writing, by the way, till the very end. Some of the writers, Sabir and Peter, they were with us on set, and sometimes we would be shooting and then someone would have an idea and we would be stop and
write that down, write that down.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so we had that, I was on board for that for about 2 months officially. And then we all moved to Budapest. At least the second batch of people moved to Budapest on January 2nd. So it was like New Year. This is Moon Knight year. So we were prepping until April for 4 months. And then we were shooting nonstop from mid-April until end of September.
Oh wow! So, did you read any Moon Knight comics prior to working on the film or the show, or was it like, oh man, I'm gonna go dive in, or did you? How much prep time did you have to do for yourself? I mean, you just working behind the scenes.
I got involved, so like between when I kind of got told that I was gonna be on board and like actually starting, it was like a week. So I had to kind of dive in once I was actually involved. Yeah. So, anyways, no, I had to dive in once I actually started on the show, and so Nick Peppett, one of the amazing Marvel execs, kind of just like sent me a whole bunch of the comics, and I just read and read and read and read. So I think I made it through honestly a big chunk of the runs, but it was kind of like while we were prepping at the same time.
Oh, that's the dream. Just get like a bunch of comic books sent to you. That's like the dream right there.
They were PDFs, to be fair, but I had them on my iPad. It almost felt like a real one. I did buy I think I bought the Lemire run. And I have that
yeah.
one to keep. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. That's awesome. So I do have a question then. Was the plan always to have Layla's character become the Scarlet Scarab, or was May just that incredible in her role that they're like, hey, you know what? Because you said that you were writing as you guys went. So were they like, actually, this would play better? Or was the plan always to kind of have her be the Scarlet Scarab?
I feel like, some of the like people who've been on board the project from even before can attest to that. But I think it was something really that happened little by little. And we were kind of also tried different ways of how to get that to happen. Because yeah, like as we wrote different versions of the script, it happened in different ways, but I love how it happens now. Also, I just really love how she ends up being Tuirit's avatar, because you'd think that Tuirit and Layla are so different. But which I think will if there's ever like an exploration of Scarlet Scarab, or of Layla's character, like that's gonna make for some really funny scenes. There were some like hilarious scenes that were cut that we never shot, like that were just in the script between like Layla and Tuirit. But even as they are now, I think they're really awesome.
Huh. So that's I love that, because she's my favorite. She became my favorite over the entire thing. We love Oscar Isaac, and we obviously love Steven, and we love Mark, but Layla really became my favorite character in the whole series. So I want more of her, to be honest with you. Like, I can't wait to see more of her character in future projects, if they do any sort of future project. So that's awesome to hear that she was just. There's a lot there, and like you said, they played well together, and they are opposite, but yet they worked so well, just meshing the characters together.
100%. Yeah, no, I mean, Layla's character was really a labor of love. I mean, like, I think it was almost cool to have a kind of blank slate. Like, we had things to work on. Like, we had the El Fuli like history and the Scarlet Scarab history, and you have Tuira and her history, and like it was cool kind of taking that as a base and then building a character like Layla, because it really was kind of like a building blocks thing where like every time we would have a rehearsal, beforehand or afterwards, like May, myself, and Sarah, we would kind of like be in May's trailer and be like, okay, like how can we go into this meeting and make Layla the best character she can be? And then we would show up and be like, okay, we're ready. I think like it's so heartwarming to see how much people are loving her. And May's performance is incredible. Layla's character is just so cool and incredible, and obviously the Scarlet Scarab is just something else. So it's really nice to see that people want more, and I really hope that Kevin listens.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I'd love to see her in the extended universe. So Was there anything on set that surprised you? Like, I'm sure you'd never been on a Marvel set before. Like, is there anything that really took you by surprise? Obviously, you mentioned the green screens, which that's got to be very shocking to go in and see something completely different than you're used to seeing. But what surprised you the most?
That's a really cool question. I mean, obviously, all the technical stuff, like, it's just so crazy. Like the stunts, like you become so desensitized to it. Like sometimes you'll just like walk into the lot, and then you'll just see someone like jumping off some kind of fake cliff, and you're like, okay, cool, yeah, like that's happening. So. Definitely like the stunts and the green screens. I mean, watching the show now, it's just like
That's what
so
we're doing
crazy.
today.
Oh yeah, listen. Or sometimes like you'd be having lunch and then like I'd see from the window like that there's just like smoke. I'm like, oh my God, something is on fire. And then I'd have a moment where I'd be like, you're on a lot, everything's okay.
Trust me, everything's either on fire on purpose or everything's taken care of.
So yeah, I think that's what really was like super cool, is just like how normal it becomes to have such abnormal things happening around you, like including like the gods, like you just like walk around and like you have Kareem, who's like Khonshu's performing, like walking around in his like draped costume, and I think like yeah, it just feels like you're living in like a dream world, and then just becomes normal. Like you stop thinking about it after a while. But this is actually maybe counterintuitive, but I think the most surprising thing to me at the end of the day was how much, at least our set, like I don't know if every Marvel set feels like this, but it felt like we could have been shooting like a short student film, in the sense that like everyone is so tight knit. Like the sets honestly felt very small. Like everyone knew each other. There was no hierarchies. Like, as an assistant, you could stand and talk to the DOP or to any of the actors. Like it was just so convivial and warm and everything. And I think that's what was kind of surprising to me, is that like it's like, oh, like it's a Marvel show and like everyone's been nominated for some kind of massive award, but at the end of the day, like we're all here just like trying to make the best show that we can make.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
I mean,
Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac, those are huge names.
Literally.
So I had actually read that they brought in Oscar Isaac's brother as a stand-in when he had to do the scenes with himself. Is that accurate? Because I read that on IMDb, so I didn't want to trust it.
It is. Michael, Oscar's brother, he's an amazing actor, and he was with us the whole time. And yeah, he like basically, was they gave him a fake nose to kind of look more like Oscar. So that was really funny seeing, like, because sometimes you have to squint because they don't look alike usually, but with the
power
fake
of
nose,
makeup,
you kind of be like, but yeah, no, that they would do the scenes opposite each other, and it was really cool watching them work together. To be honest, they have such like obviously like a brotherly love between them, and I think that really helped Oscar's performance in like in episode 5 where he has to.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, my first thought too was, in the show, his brother passes. So that had to have made it more difficult and I guess easier to act the part. 100%. But with Oscar being two people inside one person and then being two people separate, which one was easier to film? Like, was it, because I feel like it would be a little bit confusing when you're the one body, but like which one was actually easier to get through a scene, when he was one person or two people?
Honestly, I mean, Oscar is just such an amazing performer that like he did amazing in both, but I think with the one person and the switching, like initially he wanted to shoot like the Mark days separately from the Steven days, and then little by little he got super comfortable with the switching, and that kind of would happen so seamlessly. It was incredible to watch. So I think the two people outside was more difficult, just even from a technical perspective, because he would have to like act it out as like Mark, and then we would switch, and he would change costumes and everything, and then he would act it as Steven, and he would have to remember the exact blocking and everything that he did when he was playing the other character. And I think that was quite challenging for him.
I know.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
it,
think we really.
So,
I mean, I can't
it
fathom that. It's a
seems, I mean, when you're watching
totally
the
different
show, you're like,
character.
wow, he does it so seamlessly. But then you think about it and like, yeah, it probably was challenging at least to start until you really become comfortable with your character to be able to
yeah.
do
Because
that.
even his mannerisms changed, and I
His
loved his.
mannerisms
Yeah,
changed so much. Like we always say that, like depending on what character he was playing that day, like you could tell from the second you walked onto set just by the way Oscar was like standing or sitting. Like
huh?
it's
Wow.
so crazy. Yeah.
So, what was it like then with having, Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, both really high prolific actors? What was it like working with them on set? Like, was it anything like you imagined, or was it just getting to watch them work? I'm sure sometimes it's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Getting to watch them work was so incredible. Like they pour their hearts and souls really into the characters, and I think the amazing thing also about both of them is that they're not only actors, but Ethan's also like written, um, and Oscar's also a producer, so they have this kind of like multi, it's not disciplinary, but like they have an approach to it where they really take the story into consideration. And so my favorite thing was that on Sundays, for 6 consecutive Sundays, we would have like workshops or uh, rehearsals for each episode, and like it was basically just a room with like the main executives, the writers, the directors, and the actors, where we would kind of read through the script and rediscuss it and delve deeper into like what are we trying to achieve with all of this. And just like listening to Ethan and Oscar and May talk, and everyone else in the room obviously, was just like so incredible. But honestly, they're also just like such nice people. Like they'd always take the time to say hi to everyone, and they're so warm. And like it again, like it's still absurd to me to this day that I kind of am like, oh yeah, like Oscar and Ethan, when it's like Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke. Like my
Right.
friends or my brother, they're like, you have to stop doing that. I'm like, but it feels so natural. Like we really all became like one big family, because we were also like abroad, all together for almost a year. So
Yeah, I mean, you really
yeah,
build
no,
those
it was
bonds over that
such an
time, and
amazing.
it's kind of cool to see how that happens because you go in there and you're like, I'm sure from the beginning, you're probably like, wow, kind of everyone's got nerves, right? You kind of don't know everybody, and then by the end, it's just like, wow, we're all family, and it's hard
By the
to break
end,
that
we were
up.
like playing volleyball in Jordan, like all together. Like it was like so absurd.
Right, and you don't call your friends by their first and last name. Like that would
Right.
be weird.
Exactly, yeah.
So, what was your favorite day on set then? Like, what stood out to you the most as like, this was my all time favorite part from filming this whole year?
Oh, that's a really tough question. Hmm.
It could be a moment, doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like the whole day.
So the scene where Layla's in the Chamber of the Gods and she has to kind of like speak through Tuir's voice. That was like so crazy because that's a decision that was made 30 minutes before we
Oh,
shot.
wow.
And
Wow.
so we had to sit. It was like Antonia who plays Tawira, and like she gets called onto set, and Muhammad is like, "Okay, guys, you have 30 minutes. You have to make this work. Like Antonia, do your magic. Like May, you have to do what she's doing." And it was so crazy because we were kind of like watching them. Obviously, like Antonia's amazing, and she has like such little things that she does that made Tawira who she is, including this little move she does with her knee that the VFX team like was like, we have to get this. um, and so we're kind of like watch them talk for a bit, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have to shoot, and like all of a sudden like May is Antonia, like
Yeah.
Layla is Tuir. It was just like so cool to watch. It kind of almost felt like improv that day. It was like there's this thing, we have to do it, and like we're gonna do it, and it's like, okay. So that was really like just like such a fun moment of like going back to kind of like the essence of acting and like theater and like
Yeah.
just playing around really.
Now, with this being obviously Moon Knight was the first MCU thing we got that we've seen zero connections to the bigger universe. And you've made the comment of, you just said like they changed stuff. So how does that work as far as the MCU as a whole? Is it like, okay, this is the storyline you have to follow. Now have fun with it however you want to have fun with it? Or was it like, okay, we want to change this. We got to go ask somebody real quick if this is going to be consistent if we ever do see Moon Knight in the future with the Avengers or whoever else?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, Moon Knight was always kind of standalone from the start. Like, there may have been some little connections, but the story, because it's a new character, right, that's being introduced. So the show was never deeply ingrained with kind of like other storylines as some of the other shows are. And I think just kind of like as we moved forward, we were like, we already have so much to tell with our story. So I think kind of like the Marvel execs were like, okay, let's kind of just keep Moon Knight for now.
And that's probably less stressful for everybody else, because then you have like this blank slate to play with in this playground versus it's like, all right, we got to connect to 6 other shows in this movie and set this up for the future, where this time it's just like, hey, we're introducing this character, we're exploring a culture that like hasn't really been explored before, especially in the MCU. Let's go have fun and let's tell this amazing story.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I think as fans, though, it's like we see some of these things that are built up and, like an Endgame, and we're like, oh, my gosh, were they planning this when they, did Ultron, or was this just a happy accident? So I guess as a fan, I kind of wonder some of these things, like how much is like, let's just throw this in there. And in, 10 years, this might be relevant to some storyline we have, or how much of it is happy accidents that they make work later.
I do think that, the Marvel execs, like they really know what they're doing. And like we had Grant and Nick on board with us like on set, and like Nick is a force to be reckoned with. Like I don't think that anyone knows the MCU better than he does. And I am sure that he's put in some stuff that like no one else has noticed. And then one day we'll be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
That's why that guy was using that one pencil in that one scene.
Exactly.
See, that's awesome.
So this is my last question, and then we can start to do some wrap up questions. How much did they press on you guys? Be quiet, don't talk, NDA, or we will find you.
I mean, especially I think like I'd worked in the industry, so I'd seen NDAs, but the stake weren't really high. But oh my God, I was like terrified when I was like started Moon Knight, and I like had to sit like my grandma down and be like, we are just saying she's working on a show in Hungary. That's all we can say. And yeah, like I would whisper Moon Knight whenever I would talk about it. I'd be like, blah, 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 Moon Knight. And so I have a friend of mine, he won't stop making fun of me because of that. And like when the show came out, he just texts me nothing but, you can finally say it out loud.
You can speak up now. It's like every time you say it, you look over your shoulder. It's like, is there anybody around?
Exactly. But honestly, it's like, it's not just the pressure that the legal pressure in a way, but it's also just like, I think as a fan, like I used to be like a crazy fangirl. Like I know what lengths I personally would have gone through to like find things out about the things that I love.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I just also kind of was like, okay, like we all kind of were trying to keep it in also just so that the experience could be better afterwards. The surprises, I mean, something like Scarlet Scarab, like, if everyone had known from the start that this was going to happen, it wouldn't have been as exciting. So part of it is everyone just kind of like bonding together and being like, okay, like we have to do this.
I'm sure it's tough too, because you're like, there's so much exciting thing, because who doesn't like to talk about their job, especially if it's doing something as cool as, and then it's like, I can't. So it's got to be tough, and then relieving probably when it actually airs, and you're like, finally, I can freely say it.
Relieving. Like people think I don't want to talk about it. Like I have so many people be like, oh, I don't want to ask you about it. Like you must be talking about it so much. I was like, please do. Like it's like a year and a half of pent up more at this point.
Yeah.
Like, like me wanting to talk about it. So I will gladly talk about it.
So were you able to see the final shows before everybody else? Like, do you guys all get to, I mean, I'm assuming the premiere isn't the whole 6 episodes.
The premiere was the first 2 episodes. I had seen some of the director's cuts beforehand, but not all of them. So I actually haven't watched episode 5 and 6 yet.
Oh, I was about
Oh,
to
Because I
wow.
say.
refuse to have it end for me.
No, that
So I'm
makes
like
sense.
holding on to dear life to these last 2 episodes because once I've watched them, it will officially feel like it's over. But no, it's been cool. Like even the episodes that I'd already seen, like I'd seen them kind of with like temp VFX and all of that. So it was really cool getting to watch them with the score, which is just like incredible. And also get to watch it with people because it's obviously very different when you're like in the edit room versus
Mm-hmm.
like when you're in a room. I did a little screening of the four episodes with my friends, and that was just like so fun, like getting to see everyone's reactions and everything.
It's got to
They
be
must have a
cool.
million questions
Yeah,
for
I
you
was gonna
after
say
each
it's got to be
episode,
cool.
though.
Like as you're watching these, you can like fun facts about the way you guys were doing behind the scenes. Like I don't know, I feel like stuff like that's super cool because I love commentary tracks. So like that's got to be one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah, no, it was so fun at the end. Like everyone was like, "And what about this and that, whatever," and it was just like so exciting to get to finally share all that
I
stuff.
Especially with a show
yeah.
like this, that the first few episodes were such a mess. Actually, I think the first 5 episodes were ended on such a mystery.
Yeah,
And then oh man,
No, it was
I can't.
fantastic.
My favorite scene obviously was when she drops the wings. I'm sure you've seen it gifted a million times out there. You lived it, so it's like that was.
yeah,
I can't imagine what it's like for anybody else, let alone like you growing up, in Egypt, and then getting to see this finally take place. Like, oh man, it's got to be so cool to see. And then when you finally do get to watch these, just how amazing that shot's going to look. I can't imagine the emotions you're going to be feeling.
yeah. No, I mean, I obviously, I'm on Twitter. Like I've seen it all, so I. But yeah, I was like, I want to save the magic of seeing it all together
Oh
for a
yeah,
bit longer.
makes sense for sure. So, last couple questions. Then, first of all, what is one thing that you hope everyone takes away from this series?
Honestly, like this is less from like the story and more just in general, but just that like representation. Like I think people tend to look at it in like such a light of like, oh, like we have to do this, like blah 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 blah, and like that obviously brings some negative energy around it from some people. But I think like what's so cool about Moon Knight is that it just shows that it's actually a win-win for everyone. Like because for the people, like for Egyptian audiences or Arab audiences, like it's really exciting getting to see a Marvel thing and be like, I listened to that song growing up, or like I look like Layla, or all of that. But also, it's really great from a business perspective because you're opening up like new markets that you are tapping into way bigger, and you're bringing something fresh and exciting to audiences who've already been like watching everything you're doing. So I think it's just like I'm so happy that Moon Knight's reception has been so great everywhere, not just in Egypt and not just in the Arab world, because it goes to show that like, hey, look, like there's so many stories that are still out there to be told all around the world, and like if we bring them to the screen, people will watch and people are excited to watch and to learn and to see something different. So I'm just like, yeah, really, really happy to see the reactions to the show
Yeah.
in that sense, and I hope it sends a message to other studios as well to kind of like encourage them to
Oh
tap into
yeah,
different stories.
for sure. And then, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to do what it is that you do, get into filmmaking, all that kind of things? Do you have any advice to anybody looking back now?
I always am like, like I feel like I'm the one who needs advice, but I think like really one, it's just like don't be afraid. Like I think obviously like going into the arts and stuff can be kind of like a big step for a lot of people. But I think it's like so long as you're doing something that you love and you're putting like your heart and soul into it, there's no way for you not to succeed because every day you're succeeding because you're doing what you love, really. So it doesn't matter the scale that you're working on because you wake up and you're like, I'm doing what I love. And that's like such a great feeling. And then the second thing is that like the industry is really, really based on like the people that you know and
Oh
like
yeah.
building
Mm.
those relationships. And like that goes from, I mean, I wouldn't literally like the whole Marvel thing kind of like, you know, I started with Muhammad, and then my mentor I met through people I'd done an internship with, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like building out relationships, and like, it's also, and it goes like for people that you admire and like you look up to, like, don't be afraid to like shoot them a message and be like, hey, like, I really appreciate what you do. But also people like your peers. I mean, there are so many people that I went to university with, you know, that everyone doing really cool stuff now, and we kind of get to still work together or build projects together, and that's really fun. Like my next, the short film I'm working on now, it's called Last Call, and I'm co-directing it with a good friend of mine from university. So I think building out those relationships is just so important.
Yeah, it's for sure. And that was going to be my next, you know, the last is, what kind of projects do you have that are coming up that you want people to know about? And then where can people find you?
So most, like, the one that's hopefully going to happen very soon is a short film I'm working on. We're shooting it in Belgrade, Serbia. I'm co-directing it with Kaja Grujic, who's an amazing Serbian creative. So I'm really excited for that one. Hopefully it will be available. I mean, we have to shoot it still, so hopefully it will be available sometime soon. And then, yeah, a lot of other baby projects that are still kind of growing. But I'm hoping, I'm working on a documentary series about music in the Arab world.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully people who like the soundtrack of Moon Knight will enjoy it. So those are kind of like the two. And I'm associate producing a short musical.
Oh, really?
I'm really excited about that. Yeah, it's directed by Farida Zahran, who's an Egyptian filmmaker. And I love musicals. They're what made me love the movies. So I'm really, really excited for that one to
see. I'm
to
excited
wow,
for those.
You got a full plate.
Those are exciting because I've spent time in Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, like all that. So I'm excited to like experience kind of like the music and the culture and stuff, because the food alone, like I loved the food there. So I can't wait to experience some of the other stuff. So I'll be on the lookout for those for sure.
Yes, I'll definitely share them with you guys once they come to life.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, do you have anything before we wrap it up?
I just, your comment about, you know, you got to put yourself out there. You're the second. We had the Heather Antos that came on previously, and she's done editorial work for Marvel Comics, Star Wars Comics, and she said the same thing. And so many people are scared to do it. She's like, you know, you just got to put yourself out there. So I love that both of you said that.
I think people forget how nice other people can be and want to be.
Oh, yeah.
Because genuinely, like, the only reason sometimes someone might not respond is that they just have a lot on their plate. But most of the time, like, everyone wants to help out or to talk or to... So you really like, if you put yourself out there, like, someone will kind of respond back and want to help. So it's worth the shot for sure.
That is really good advice. That is good advice.
And that's about it. I can't wait to see. I know we're probably not going to see them anytime soon, but I cannot wait to see
they did
both of them.
We're not talking the future, but I will say that the official account changed it from series finale to season finale. So,
but see, like Loki at the end, they're like, there's going to be a 2.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that with any of the other series.
It's coming back. I know it. And hopefully it does come back, and hopefully we get to see you working on the second season or whenever Moon Knight does come back. So
time to meet Jake Lockley.
Yeah. I mean, the way they set it up for sure. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch everybody next time. Make sure to follow and check out these films, check everything out, and cheers.
has been a Hops News production. You can find Hops News on all your favorite podcasts and social media platforms at Hops News. Cheers.